The stars burned red in the distance as High Counselor Minho watched 17 worlds die on his command screen. Each dot of light represented billions of lives that had been snuffed out in mere weeks. The Catherian Confederacy, once a proud alliance of peaceful trading worlds, now faced complete destruction. Sir, the defense fleet from Sector 9 has been completely destroyed. 8. The young communications officer Jisoo could barely keep her voice steady as she delivered the report. The bioships adapted to our plasma weapons within minutes. Our shields meant nothing to them. Minho closed his eyes and felt the weight of 1,000 worlds pressing down on his shoulders. The Vorthok hegemony had swept through their territory like a plague, consuming everything in their path. Their ships were not built by hands but grown like living creatures, able to change and adapt to any weapon fired at them. Every time the Catherians thought they had found a weakness, the enemy ships simply evolved past it. "How many refugees made it out of the Altair system?" he asked quietly. "Less than 10%, sir. The evacuation ships were too slow. The Vorthok, they don't take prisoners." The war room fell silent except for the steady beeping of warning signals from across their remaining territory. Defense Minister Junho stood at the tactical display, his face pale as he watched red markers advance deeper into Catherian space. Each marker represented a bioship the size of a city, filled with creatures that saw other species as nothing more than food. "Our military analysis is complete," Junho announced to the council. "At current rate of advance, we have perhaps 2 months before they reach our core worlds. Our weapons are useless against their adaptive armor. Our fastest ships are slower than their slowest scouts. We cannot win this war." Counselor Nari, the eldest member of their government, spoke in a voice heavy with years. "In 3,000 years of civilization, we have never faced anything like this. They do not negotiate, they do not trade, they do not even communicate. They simply consume." The holographic display showed the true scope of the disaster. The Vorthok had already destroyed the mighty Zeltan Empire, absorbed the technology of the Crystal Federation, and wiped out dozens of smaller civilizations. Each conquest made them stronger, their bioships incorporating new abilities and weapons. From their victims, "What about the Galactic Council?" asked the young counselor Tyone. "Surely they will intervene." Minho shook his head sadly. "I received their response this morning. They are sealing their borders and will not risk their own populations. The Andromedan Alliance, the Spiral Arm Coalition, even the warrior clans of Rigel, they all refuse to help. They know that fighting the Vorthok means extinction." The room filled with the sound of incoming messages, each one another nail in their civilization's coffin. Species after species sent their regrets, their sympathies, their promises to remember Catherian culture after they were gone. Not one offered military assistance. Communications Officer Jisoo looked up from her station with tears in her large eyes. "Sir, we're receiving reports from the outer colonies. Bioships have been seen in the Kepler sector. They're moving faster than expected." "How long do we have?" Minho asked, though he dreaded the answer. 6 weeks, maybe less. "Their advanced scouts are already probing our defensive positions around the Vega worlds." The weight of responsibility crushed down on Minho as he stared at the tactical display. Billions of people looked to him for salvation, and he had nothing to offer them but a dignified surrender to extinction. The Catherians had always been peaceful, solving conflicts through trade and diplomacy. They had no experience with total war, no weapons designed for genocide, no military traditions built on violence. "There is one option," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "We could send out a general distress call, broadcast on all frequencies, reach beyond the known galaxy if necessary." "With respect, who would answer?" Junho asked. "Every major power has already refused us. Then we reach out to the minor powers, the unknown civilizations, the species we have never made contact with." Minho's voice grew stronger as the idea took shape. "We offer everything, our technology, our knowledge, our worlds to anyone willing to help us survive." Counselor Nari leaned forward. "You want to give away our most precious secrets to complete strangers?" "What good are secrets when we are all dead?" Minho replied. What value does our technology have if there are no Catherians left to use it? The council voted quickly, with the efficiency of the desperate. Within an hour, they're most powerful. Transmitters began broadcasting a message that would reach across the galaxy and beyond. It was simple, honest, and filled with the quiet dignity of a people facing extinction. This is the Catherian Confederacy. We are under attack by a force we cannot defeat. Our worlds are dying, our people are being slaughtered, and our civilization faces extinction. We offer our most advanced technologies, our knowledge, our friendship, to any species willing to help us survive. Please, if anyone can hear this message, we are begging for help. The message went out into the void, carried by quantum transmitters to the farthest reaches of known space and beyond. For 3 days they waited, watching the Vorthok advance while praying for a miracle. Most responses were polite refusals. A few offered to take refugees. Only one message came from completely unknown space. Transmitted in basic galactic standard with a strange accent none of them had heard before. Terran Republic received your call. Help is coming. Hold your positions. 3 days passed like a nightmare for the Catherians trapped on Nexus Prime. The Vorthok bioships hung in space around their world like massive tumors, pulsing with alien life as they prepared for the final assault. High Counselor Minho stood in the command center, watching the enemy fleet grow larger every hour as more bioships arrived to join the siege. "Sir, our planetary shields are down to 30% power," reported Defense Coordinator Suman. "The Vorthok energy drains are slowly eating through our defenses. We have maybe 6 hours before they can begin landing troops." Minho nodded grimly. The mysterious Terran Republic had promised help, but no ships had appeared. Perhaps they had been destroyed trying to reach Nexus Prime, or perhaps they had taken one look at the Vorthok fleet and decided the battle was hopeless. He could not blame them for that choice. "Counselor Minho, something is happening. Communications officer," Jisoo called out suddenly. "I'm detecting massive energy readings at the edge of the system. It looks like ... hyperspace tears." The main display flickered and changed to show the outer system. Space itself seemed to be ripping apart, torn open by forces beyond Catherian understanding. Through the wounds in reality came ships, but not just a few vessels as Minho had hoped. Hundreds of ships poured through the hyperspace portals, their angular designs completely unlike anything in the galactic databases. "How many ships are we seeing?" Minho asked, unable to believe the numbers on his screen. "Over 300 and... Still coming, sir? They're arranging themselves in battle formation." The human ships looked crude compared to the elegant curves of Catherian technology. Where Catherian vessels were smooth and graceful, these ships were all angles and hard edges, covered in strange bumps and extensions that served unknown purposes. They moved with the efficiency of a military force that had seen real combat, not the careful precision of peacekeeping vessels. Admiral Jaeon stood on the bridge of the human flagship TR's Indomitable, studying the tactical display that showed the massive Vorthok bioships surrounding the Catherian world. Each bioship was the size of a small moon, covered in organic armor that pulsed with its own life. They were the perfect killing machines, evolved over millions of years to be unstoppable. Weapons of war. "Sir, the Catherian government is trying to contact us," reported Communications Officer Ming-Yi. "They want to know our tactical assessment and battle plan." "Tell him Admiral Jaeon, 3rd Fleet of the Terran Republic," he said calmly, never taking his eyes off the display. "As for our tactical assessment, we're here to end this war." The Vorthok bioships detected the human fleet and began to move. Their massive forms turning toward what they assumed was another group of desperate aliens trying to interfere with their conquest. The bioships had learned from every species. They had fought, adapting their weapons and defenses to counter any possible threat. They were confident in their superiority. "All ships, this is Admiral Jaeon," came the voice over the fleet communications. "Target selection is simple. Anything that looks like it wants to eat civilians gets destroyed. Weapons free in 30 seconds. The human ships spread out into an attack formation that the Catherians had never seen before, instead of the careful, defensive positions that most species preferred. The humans formed aggressive assault groups designed to close distance and overwhelm their enemies through sheer firepower. "Sir, the human ships are advancing directly toward the bioships," Suman reported with amazement. "They're not even raising shields." The first exchange of fire between humans and Vorthok lasted exactly 47 seconds. The bioships, expecting to face energy weapons like every other species used, found themselves under attack by weapons that operated on completely different principles. Human ships opened fire with kinetic railguns that hurled chunks of metal at incredible speeds, nuclear torpedoes that created miniature suns, and particle beams that simply burned through anything in their path. The Vorthok bioships tried to adapt their armor to these new weapons, but there was nothing to adapt to. The humans were not using sophisticated energy fields or plasma charges that could be countered. They were using brute force, raw kinetic energy, and nuclear fire that could not be evolved past or adapted to. "Target destroyed," reported weapons. Officer Kyung from the human flagship. "Bioship was trying to change its armor when our railgun rounds went right through it." Admiral Jayan watched 3 more bioships explode under human fire. "These things are used to fighting energy weapons. They don't know what to do when someone just shoots big chunks of metal at them really fast." On Nexus Prime, the Catharians watched in stunned silence as the battle unfolded. Their sensors showed human ships taking damage from Vorthok weapons. But instead of retreating or trying to adapt their defenses, the humans simply ignored the damage and kept shooting. When one human ship had its main weapons destroyed, it rammed directly into a bioship while its crew evacuated to nearby vessels. "They fight like the ancient warriors from our history books," whispered Counselor Nari. "No fear, no retreat, just pure aggression." Within 2 hours, the Vorthok fleet around Nexus Prime was completely destroyed. The bioships that had terrorized the galaxy for decades were reduced to burning debris floating in space. The human fleet took position around the planet, their crude-looking ships somehow more reassuring than the most advanced Catharian vessels. Admiral June's final message was simple: "Nexus Prime is secure. We'll start hunting down the rest of them tomorrow." Captain Yaji kicked down the twisted organic door of the Vorthok bioship and stepped into the dark corridor beyond. Her powered armor made her look like a metal giant, and the heavy assault rifle in her hands was designed to punch holes through starship hulls. Behind her, 12 more human marines followed in perfect formation, their boots echoing against the squishy floor of the living ship. "Sector 7, moving to clear," she reported over the radio. These things built their ships like they were growing plants, but they still die when you shoot them enough. The bioship was dying around them, its organic walls bleeding green fluid where human weapons had torn through the hull. The Vorthok warriors inside were 7 feet tall, with razor-sharp claws and armor that had evolved to stop energy weapons. Unfortunately for them, human bullets did not care about evolution. A Vorthok soldier leaped from a side passage, its claws extended and ready to tear through what it expected to be soft alien flesh. Instead, it met Yaji's rifle barrel and 3 rounds of armor-piercing ammunition that sent it crashing back into the wall. The creature's natural armor, perfected over millions of years, had never encountered simple kinetic weapons fired at high velocity. "Contact eliminated," Yaji reported calmly. Moving to the next sector. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out on dozens of captured bioships. Human marines moved through organic corridors like they were walking through their own neighborhoods, methodically clearing each room and capturing or destroying everything they found. Where other species had failed against Vorthok adaptability, humans succeeded through overwhelming firepower, complete disregard for conventional tactics. On the bridge of his command ship, Admiral Jayon watched the tactical display as human forces systematically dismantled the Vorthok fleet. Each bioship that tried to adapt to human weapons found itself facing different weapons, or the same weapons used in completely different ways, or sometimes just human ships ramming into them at full speed. "Sir, Captain Minsu is reporting success." On Bioship 7, his aide announced. His engineering team figured out how to turn off their life support systems. The ship died from the inside out, and Captain Hyun is using their own bioweapons against them. Apparently human immune systems are completely incompatible with Vorthok biological attacks, so she's just collecting their weapons and firing them back. Jayan nodded approvingly. This was how humans fought wars, not through superior technology or advanced tactics, but through sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. When one approach failed, they tried 17 others. When their weapons were ineffective, they found new weapons. When their ships were destroyed, they built more ships. Dr. Sion worked frantically in the medical bay of the hospital ship, TR's Mercy, treating wounded from both sides of the battle. Human casualties were surprisingly light, but she refused to let anyone die if she could prevent it. Even Vorthok prisoners received the same medical care as human soldiers, much to their confusion. "This one has 3 bullet wounds, but should survive," she told her assistant while working on a captured Vorthok warrior. "Their biology is different, but not impossible to treat. Just keep the anesthetic flowing and patch up the holes." "What ok?" Prisoners stared at her with large black eyes, unable to understand why an enemy would save its life. In Vorthok culture, wounded soldiers were left to die or consumed by their own kind for resources. The concept of medical care for enemies was completely foreign to them. "Why do you heal me?" the creature managed to ask in broken galactic standard. "Because you're hurt," C1 replied simply, not looking up from her work. "That's what doctors do." Meanwhile, in the manufacturing bays of the human fleet, entire assembly lines worked around the clock to produce ammunition, spare parts, and replacement equipment. Captain Changman supervised the construction of 3 new fighter craft from raw materials, scavenged from destroyed bioships. The Vorthok use biological technology, but metal is still metal. He explained to a curious Catherian observer who had been allowed aboard, can break down their ships and use the materials to build our own equipment. Give us a week, and we can turn their entire fleet into human weapons. This was the aspect of human warfare that terrified other species. The most not their weapons or their tactics, but their ability to turn any situation into an advantage. Human ships carried manufacturing capabilities that could build entire fleets during extended campaigns. Human soldiers could adapt to any environment and use any available resources as weapons. Human medics could keep their forces fighting even after taking casualties that would cripple other armies. Lieutenant Dong Yun demonstrated this principle perfectly when his fighter squadron encountered a new type of bioship that had adapted to their missile systems. Instead of retreating or calling for backup, he simply switched to kinetic rounds. When the bioship adapted to those, he switched to laser weapons. When it adapted to lasers, he rammed his ship into its weak point while ejecting at the last second. Problem solved, he reported cheerfully as he was picked up by a rescue ship. That thing can adapt to weapons all at once, but it can't adapt to having a fighter craft stuck in its brain. The Catherian military observers were taking notes frantically, trying to understand human combat doctrine. Their reports back to High Command all reached the same conclusion. Humans did not fight like any known species. They fought like the universe owed them a victory, and they were personally offended by anyone who disagreed. Human tactical doctrine appears to be, if one approach fails, try 17 others simultaneously, wrote military analyst Yunji in her official report. They seem to view impossible odds as a personal insult rather than a tactical constraint. The Vorthok High Command had never experienced defeat in their 3-million-year history of conquest. Their bioships had consumed entire galaxies, adapted to every weapon ever fired at them, and evolved past every defense other species could devise. But now, for the first time, their field commanders were sending reports that made no sense. Supreme Bioleader Korth studied the tactical displays in his command chamber. A living room grown from the heart of their greatest bioship. The organic walls pulsed with frustrated energy as he tried to understand how his forces were losing to what appeared to be a primitive species using crude weapons. "They do not adapt," reported Field Commander Vex, his voice carrying across the bio-neural link. "When we change our armor to stop their metal projectiles, they simply fire more metal projectiles. Faster ones, bigger ones. They do not try to outsmart us, they just hit us harder." "When you adapted to their explosive weapons," Korth asked. "They used different explosives, and they used their ships as weapons. Then they boarded our vessels and fought us with hand weapons. Supreme Leader, they fight like ... like animals. No intelligence, no strategy, just endless aggression." Korth felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. The Vorthok way of war was perfect, refined through eons of evolution. They studied their enemies, adapted to their weapons, and absorbed their strengths. But these humans refused to follow the rules that governed all intelligent warfare. "Perhaps we should offer terms," suggested bioadvisor Yex, her mental voice. Barely a whisper in the collective consciousness. We could withdraw from Catharian space, offer tribute, seek negotiation. The suggestion sent ripples of shock through the bioship. The Vorthok had never retreated, never negotiated, never shown weakness to any species, but the human attacks were spreading across their territory like a disease, and their perfect bioships were being destroyed faster than they could be grown. "Send the message," Korth decided finally. "Offer them withdrawal from contested systems and non-aggression treaties. Even animals can be trained to accept food instead of fighting." The diplomatic transmission reached Admiral Jayon as he stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching human forces systematically destroy another Vorthok stronghold. The message was formal, offering immediate withdrawal from Catharian space and a permanent peace treaty in exchange for ending hostilities. "Sir, what should I tell them?" asked Communications Officer Minji. Jayon looked at the tactical display showing burning Vorthok bioships and thought about the 17 worlds. They had already exterminated the billions of innocent people they had murdered without mercy. His response was broadcast on all frequencies, so every Vorthok vessel could hear it clearly. "You had your chance for peace before you started killing civilians. Oh, now you get to finish what you started." The message sent another wave of shock through Vorthok space. No species had ever rejected their offer of negotiation. Even their most powerful enemies had eventually accepted some form of peace treaty rather than face total war with the hegemony. But the humans were just getting started. Over the following days, space around every major Vorthok system began to shimmer with incoming hyperspace tiers. Through came fleets bearing different flags and symbols, but all clearly human in design. The Solar Federation arrived with massive dreadnoughts. Centauri Alliance brought carrier groups filled with fighters. The new Geneva Compact deployed hospital ships alongside their battle cruisers. Captain Juan commanded one of the new Geneva vessels, a hospital ship that looked like it could serve as a battleship if necessary. She watched the various human fleets coordinate their attacks with the efficiency of forces that had fought together for centuries. "This is what happens when you mess with civilians," she explained to a captured Vorthok officer in her medical bay. "Every human nation heard your genocide, and every human nation decided you needed to be stopped. We don't have one government, but we do have shared principles." "But there are so many of you," the wounded Vorthok warrior whispered. "How many humans exist?" "Enough," Guan replied simply. "We've been spreading across the galaxy for thousands of years. Most species never noticed us because we're peaceful traders and explorers. But when someone starts committing genocide, we become something else entirely." Colonel Minsiok led ground operations on 3 different Vorthok worlds simultaneously, coordinating with forces from a dozen different human nations. His soldiers came from the Martian Defense Corps, the Titan mining guilds, and the Europa Agricultural Collective civilian organizations that had transformed into military units overnight. "You see, the thing about humans is this," he explained. To a confused Catharian observer, "We're not naturally violent. Most of us spend our lives farming, building, exploring, creating art. But when someone starts murdering innocent people, every human becomes a soldier. Every factory becomes a weapons plant. Every civilian ship becomes a military transport." The galaxy watched in stunned amazement as humanity revealed the true scope of their civilization. What had appeared to be a single nation was actually dozens of human governments, each controlling hundreds of worlds, all united by a simple principle that genocide was unacceptable. The Vorthok found themselves fighting not just a military force, but an entire species that had declared war on their existence. Human factory ships appeared in orbit around liberated worlds, building orbital defense platforms. Human agricultural vessels began growing food for refugee populations. Human hospital ships treated alien wounded with the same care they gave their own people. Admiral Tae-yoon, commanding the forces from the Proxima Centauri Republic, sent a message that was intercepted by Vorthok intelligence. "We didn't come here to conquer or rule. We came here because someone asked us to care about strangers dying in the dark. That's what humans do." The Vorthok High Command realized they were not fighting a military campaign anymore. We're fighting an entire civilization that viewed their existence as a problem to be solved through superior firepower and unbreakable determination. The Vorthok homeworld had never been threatened in 3 million years of conquest. Its massive biocities stretched across continents, pulsing with the collected knowledge of 1,000 destroyed civilizations. The orbital defenses were living fortresses that had evolved specifically to protect the heart of their empire. Nothing had ever come close to challenging their ultimate stronghold, until the human fleet arrived. General Sunho stood on the bridge of the dreadnought, unstoppable, watching as over 2,000 human ships took positions around the Vorthok homeworld. Ships from every human nation formed a perfect sphere around the planet, their weapons trained on the biocities below. The sight was so overwhelming that even the evolved Vorthok defenders seemed paralyzed by the sheer scale of the human response. "Sir, we're receiving multiple surrender signals from the surface," reported Communications Officer Do-yoon. "The Vorthok High Command wants to negotiate terms." "Tell them the terms are simple," Sunho replied calmly. "Unconditional surrender, complete disarmament, reparations to every species they've harmed, and their leadership stands trial for war crimes. Non-negotiable." The surrender came not through defeat in battle, but through the simple realization that humans would keep coming until every Vorthok military asset was destroyed. The bioships that had terrorized the galaxy for eons suddenly seemed small and pathetic compared to the human fleet that surrounded their world like a metal cage. Supreme. Bio leader Korth emerged from his command chamber for the first time in centuries, his massive form trembling as he faced the human delegation. He had expected to meet conquerors who would claim his world and enslave his people. Instead, he found himself facing beings who seemed more interested in ensuring justice than claiming territory. "Why do you not consume our world?" he asked General Sunho through a translator. "You have defeated us completely. Our biocities, our knowledge, our technology, all of it could be yours." "Because we're not you," Sunho replied simply. "We didn't come here to build an empire. We came here to stop you from killing innocent people." Meanwhile, on the liberated world of Nexus Prime, High Counselor Minho prepared the greatest treasure vault in Catherian history. Quantum computers that could calculate the movements of entire galaxies. Zero-point energy systems that could power civilizations for millennia. Gravitational manipulation devices that could reshape space itself. Technologies that represented thousands of years of peaceful, scientific advancement. "All of this belongs to humanity now," he announced to the assembled council. "Without their intervention, none of it would exist. Our entire civilization owes them a debt that can never be repaid." The human response surprised the entire galaxy. Admiral Jaeon stood before the Catherian Council, looking uncomfortable with all the formal ceremony and grand speeches. His answer was delivered in the same matter-of-fact tone he might use to decline an invitation to dinner. "Keep your technology. You didn't come here for profit or payment. Just remember that help is available when innocent people need it." "But surely you must want something," insisted Counselor Nari. "Your fleet, your soldiers, the resources you spent. There must be some compensation we can provide." "You can help us help others," Admiral Jaehoon replied. "When someone else calls for help against genocide or slavery or conquest, you can remember that standing up for strangers is worth doing." Within months of the Vorthok surrender, human ships began appearing throughout the galaxy in a completely different role. The Terran Peace Enforcement Corps established bases on former battlefields, their Marines training local defense forces and their engineers rebuilding destroyed infrastructure. Human hospital ships orbited refugee worlds, treating survivors of Vorthok attacks. Human diplomatic vessels mediated disputes between species who had never considered peaceful solutions. Captain Yeji, who had once led boarding parties against bioships, now commanded a patrol vessel protecting trade routes from pirates and raiders. Her crew included volunteers from dozens of human worlds, all united by the simple belief that peace was worth fighting for. "It's different work than combat," she explained to a young Catherian officer who had joined her crew. "But it's still important work. Someone still needs to make sure the bad guys don't win." Dr. Suayan established medical stations throughout former Vorthok territory, treating species that had been enslaved or experimented on by their former captors. Her hospitals welcomed anyone who needed help, regardless of species or ability to pay. The concept of free medical care for aliens was revolutionary in a galaxy where most civilizations barely trusted their neighbors. "Healthcare is a right, not a privilege," she told her staff of mixed human and alien doctors. "Everyone deserves to be healed when they're hurt." The Catherian Historical Archive updated their records to mark the day humanity answered their call as the Great Awakening. It was the moment the galaxy discovered that in the darkness between stars, an entire civilization had been quietly spreading, not to conquer or control, but simply to exist and explore and create. And when someone had asked them to care about strangers facing extinction, they had responded with every ship, every soldier, and every resource they possessed. High Counselor Minho's final entry in his personal journal became one of the most quoted passages in galactic history. "We begged for help, and humanity arrived in force. Not to rule us, not to replace our oppressors, but simply because someone asked them to care. They fought not for territory or resources or glory, but for the simple principle that nobody should face extinction alone. The galaxy will never be the same, and that is the greatest gift any species has ever received. The age of unchecked conquest had ended. In its place came something the galaxy had never known: peace enforced not by fear, but by neighbors who refused to let bullies win."